In the heart of the vibrant city, a young woman steps into the unknown. Marisela Botello-Valadez, a spirited 23-year-old, was far from her home in Seattle. She had journeyed to Dallas, Texas, a city pulsating with life and energy, for a weekend visit. But as the city lights flickered in the Texas night, Marisela's own light was about to be tragically dimmed. Her last known movements were captured in the early hours of October 5, 2020. Marisela, a vivacious young woman with an infectious smile, was seen leaving a bar in the Deep Ellum district. This area, renowned for its lively nightlife, was teeming with people. Yet amidst the crowd, Marisela was seen with one man in particular. He was unidentified, a stranger with whom she had just crossed paths. Marisela, unaware of the danger lurking beneath the surface, climbed into a vehicle with this man, a decision that would mark her last known moments of freedom. The night was still young, but the darkness had already started to creep in. The city that was once full of life and energy had suddenly become a sinister labyrinth of uncertainty. The initial police report painted a picture of mystery and intrigue. A young woman out of town and alone had vanished without a trace. The police were grappling with a puzzle that seemed to have no clear solution. The only lead was the unidentified man, but he was like a ghost, leaving no trace behind. Meanwhile, Marisela's family was consumed by worry. Their beloved Marisela, the girl with the bright smile and even brighter spirit, was missing. Their pleas for help echoed across the city, a desperate call to anyone who might have information. But as the city woke to a new day, their cries were met with silence. The vibrant city had become a chilling backdrop to a grim tale. The bars and clubs of Deep Ellum, once symbols of life and celebration, were now tainted by the shadow of Marisela's disappearance. As the sun rose on another day, Marisela was nowhere to be found. As hours turned into days, the search for Marisela intensified. The initial calm of a routine missing persons case quickly transformed into a frantic scramble for answers. The local authorities sprung into action, interviewing everyone who had any connection to Marisela. Friends, family, and potential witnesses all found themselves under the magnifying glass, their lives upended as they were questioned about the last time they saw or spoke to Marisela. The police started piecing together the fragments of Marisela's last known movements. The puzzle led them to the popular nightlife area where she was last seen alive, and to the man whose car she was seen climbing into. This man, an ordinary local with a seemingly normal life, was about to become the focal point of this investigation. As the detectives delved into his life, they discovered that he was not as innocent as he first appeared. His home, the last known location of Marisela, became the center of a thorough search. The investigators, armed with a warrant, meticulously combed through the property, seeking any evidence that might shed light on Marisela's disappearance. Every room was turned inside out, every corner scrutinized. The once ordinary home now resembled a forensic battlefield, each piece of potential evidence meticulously cataloged and bagged. The investigators were relentless, leaving no stone unturned in their determination to discover what happened to Marisela. As the search continued, the man's life was laid bare. His relationships, his interactions, his very character were all scrutinized. The police began to paint a picture of a man who was perhaps not as charming or innocent as he seemed, but the more they uncovered, the more questions arose. The search of the house yielded few answers. There were no signs of struggle, no obvious clues to indicate Marisela's fate. The lack of evidence only served to heighten the tension, casting a pall over the investigation. The detectives were left with a jigsaw puzzle with missing pieces, a mystery that seemed to deepen with every passing day. But the more the police dug, the deeper the mystery seemed to become. The investigation was just beginning, and the road to justice for Marisela would prove to be a long and winding one. Behind closed doors, a chilling picture began to emerge. As detectives delved deeper into the investigation, a disturbing pattern started to surface. The man Marisela was last seen with wasn't just a charming stranger. He was a man with a history that painted him in a far less flattering light. His name was linked to multiple women, not just casual flings, but relationships that ended in restraining orders, accusations of violence, and fear. A man who on the surface was charismatic and intriguing, but beneath that veneer lay a darker, more dangerous persona. The kind of person who could make a young woman like Marisela disappear without a trace. As investigators dug deeper, they discovered a trail of breadcrumbs leading to a horrifying reality. They found evidence of Marisela's belongings in the suspect's home. her cell phone, her purse, items she wouldn't have left behind willingly. This was no ordinary missing persons case. The charming stranger was now a prime suspect in what was shaping up to be a potential murder investigation. But it wasn't just physical evidence that pointed to his guilt. His behavior after Marisela's disappearance was suspicious. He was evasive, uncooperative, and showed a level of indifference that was unsettling. He didn't behave like an innocent man, he behaved like a man with something to hide. And then there were the other women. Women who had known him, been involved with him, and had lived to tell the tale. Their stories were eerily similar. They spoke of his charm, his manipulation, and his propensity for violence. They painted a picture of a man capable of unspeakable acts. As the investigators pieced together the puzzle, the picture became clear. Marisela had unknowingly walked into a nightmare that fateful night in October. She had trusted a stranger, a man who was far from the charming figure he presented himself to be. She had left with a man who was not only a danger to her, but to all women he came across. The man Marisela left with that night was not who he seemed to be. As the leaves fell in Dallas, hope for Marisela's safe return began to fade. The turning point came on a chilly day in November, over a month since Marisela's disappearance. In a remote area frequented by few, the unthinkable was discovered. Marisela's remains were found, confirming the darkest fears of her family and friends, shattering the thin veneer of hope that had kept them afloat. The vibrant 23-year-old, full of dreams and aspirations, had met a tragic end. The discovery shook the community, a chilling reminder of the vulnerability that lies within the shadows of our everyday lives. Yet this tragic discovery was not the end, but a new beginning in the quest for justice. The discovery of Marisela's remains was a crucial piece of the puzzle that propelled the investigation forward. The evidence pointed to the man last seen with Marisela. The charming stranger whose house Marisela was last seen entering was no longer a faceless enigma. His name was revealed to the public as the primary suspect in Marisela's murder. But he wasn't acting alone. There were others, accomplices to the crime, who had their own tangled web of connections with the suspect. Charges were brought against them, marking the first step in a long journey for justice. They were accused of a crime that sent ripples through the community, a crime that took away a beloved daughter, friend, and a bright young woman with an entire life ahead of her. Each development in the case was a stark reminder of the tragedy that unfolded on that fateful October night. Yet it also brought to light the determination of all those involved in the investigation, refusing to let Marisela's story be forgotten. Marisela's life was cut tragically short, but her story was far from over. The tragic discovery marked not an end, but the beginning of a pursuit for justice, a relentless quest to ensure that Marisela's voice would continue to be heard, even after her untimely departure from this world. In the wake of tragedy, a quest for justice emerged. As the tangled web of deceit unraveled, a chilling narrative took shape. Marisela Botello-Valadez, a vibrant 23-year-old, had become the victim of a brutal crime. The man she was last seen with, the stranger who had charmed her, was now standing trial along with his accomplices. The courtroom was a storm of emotions. Each day brought with it revelations more harrowing than the last. Evidence was presented, testimonies were heard, and a portrait of the horrific night Marisela met her untimely demise was painted in vivid, heartbreaking detail. The prosecution was relentless, seeking to ensure that those responsible for this heinous act would pay for their deeds. The trial culminated in a verdict that sent shockwaves through the community. The man, the charming stranger from that fateful night, and his accomplices were found guilty. They were handed sentences that ensured they'd spend the majority of their remaining lives behind bars. It was a moment of bittersweet relief. Justice had been served, but at a cost that was too great. Marisela's story had a profound impact. It spread far beyond the confines of the courtroom, igniting conversations about safety, trust, and the perils that women face in situations that should be innocuous. Her tale became a rallying cry, a call to action to protect and respect each other, to be vigilant and aware of the dangers that can lurk in the shadows. But in the midst of the sorrow and outrage, there was also a sense of unity. The community came together, vowing to remember Marisela, to honor her memory and ensure her story continues to be told. Vigils were held, memorials were erected, and her name became synonymous with strength and resilience. In the face of unimaginable loss, Marisela's legacy lives on, a stark reminder of the dangers that lurk in the shadows. Despite the darkness that marked her end, Marisela's light continues to shine, inspiring change and reminding us of the enduring power of justice.